how she spends her relenting hours in the army.
Thank you so much, Julian. Hello, everyone. My name is Captain Dorothy Muya. I'm the Social Services Secretary as well as the Child Protection Officer for the Salvation Army Uganda Territory. This day is very important to us because as a church and as an organization, we have quite a number of youths and children who are under our care. We have so many churches, and we also have social centers, social institutions where we have children schooling in those institutions, and that calls us to celebrate this day because it marks, it's a mark, it has its significance, and it makes us to want to bring awareness into how we should, as a church, embrace the rights of children, especially the right to education.
Yes. Thank you so much, and you're welcome to this show.
Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, and also on my extreme right is the man himself. You're very welcome, Mr. Babigumira. Welcome to this, our talk show, and kindly introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, and I welcome all our viewers. It's nice to have a conversation with you. My name is Apuli Babigumira, and I am an advocate and speak about African development. And I am glad that we have a day to talk about the African child.
Yes,
Thanks, Julia.
and I love the fact that you emphasized Apuli, but that will be for another conversation. You must be a Pan-Africanist, but that's okay. I would like to remind our viewers, please do not forget to send in your comments, your questions about how the conversation will flow. We shall endeavor to make sure that we answer every question that will come in. Please stay tuned as we start our conversation. I would like to invite to ask Apuli himself, Billy, yes, tell us the relevance. Why should we commemorate the African Child Day?
You cannot think about the future before you recognize your present.
Sure.
And you cannot appreciate your presence or your present if you ignore your past. So for us to understand how Africa got to have an African Child Day, we need to learn of the history that brought us where we are. So in the next about few minutes, I'm going to take us through quickly how we got to celebrate National Day for the African child. In 1948, there was the end of the Second World War. South Africa, which was predominantly, not predominantly, which was purely white governed, decided to...
Every day, children in Africa shine. They dream big, they learn, they play, and they make our world a brighter place. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer, a teacher, a pilot. I want to help everyone. This is the Day of the African Child, a day to celebrate the hopes and dreams of every child in Africa. This year's theme is Education for All Children in Africa. Time is now. It calls us to action. It's a reminder that every child, regardless of their background, deserves the opportunity to thrive and to reach their full potential. The Salvation Army Uganda Territory Anti-Human Trafficking Project is calling upon us all to prioritize education, which serves as the cornerstone of development and empowerment. It's through education that children gain the knowledge and skill to break the cycle of poverty, to innovate, and to contribute to communities and nations. We can all play a part in creating a brighter future for every child. Visit our social media handles on Facebook.
That we are not fine with this language because it's mostly Dutch. If we're instructed and examined in Dutch in this African language, Afrikaans, it's called Afrikaans language, but it's really a Dutch language, German, Dutch combined, we will not understand anything, and so we are going to fail our exams. So the students we shall not go into the details of the movements that organized this. The students decided that on the 16th of June 1976, they demonstrate peacefully against being taught in this language. They had somehow accepted being taught to be servants but being taught in this language, they refused.
Yeah.
So some movements, they came up to organize this. Actually, we are told, according to the different historians, some students never knew that that day there were some demonstrations that were going to happen in Soweto. But when they arrived and the demonstration started at 7, they started at 7 at a school which was nearby a bus station. So which means when schools would get off the bus, they would immediately join the what? The demonstration. And why were students willing to join the demonstration? They had been oppressed in the education sector since 1953.
Yeah.
And now the seniors in candidate classes had realized that they are going to fail. Mind you, the demonstration started in a junior school, at a junior school. So they had realized that if this goes on, they are going to fail. So everyone joined. Students from junior schools to senior school, they joined the demonstration. By around midday, the police had started firing not only tear gas, but also live bullets amongst children.
Firing
Children
innocent children.
firing,
Yeah.
peacefully demonstrating.
Who are not armed.
What people never say about this International Day, that reporters estimate that that day, South Africa lost between 176 to 700 children because police fired at them. Now, what is important about this day is actually the day that started a revolution against apartheid internationally. Now, this is when the international world realizes that there's a problem in South Africa. How can you fire at children who had actually a viable reason why they were demonstrating? Now, there's a photo that is common, whether on the internet or not, of a kid called Peterson. Now, Peterson was the representation of the suffering of children because he's seen to have been carried by a friend as a sister walks by. But the pain that South Africa went through when its children were dying, 1,000 are reported to have been injured. Children, even there's a child who was a primary 7 child who was interviewed and was giving a reason why he joined the demonstration. He said, we had come up with a policy. Anyone among us injured, everyone is injured. So primary kids were on the streets fighting. Now, that is when the African Union, at that time it was called the Organization of the African Union, decided to declare 16th June as a date to commemorate. When that happened, remember the demonstration actually took 2 days, but they started on 16th, they ended on 18th. So that day was now declared to be a day when we shall commemorate the African child, because there is an African child that lost their blood to that. And I think the reason that's why we are mostly talking about education when we are talking about this African Day, especially like today, is because those kids went on the street because they wanted to access fair and quality education, which is a social development goal for the UN. Goal number 4, quality education. And we cannot achieve quality education for our children if we don't remember a child, the 700 who lost their lives in advocating for good education.
Yes. Wow, thank you so much for that detailed preamble. So in other words, the children back in Soweto died. There was an uprising, in other words, right?
Yes.
And many children who were not armed were killed as a result. And we also see even throughout subsequent days, even the parents rose
joining.
up and they also died, you know,
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
same
that's true.
time. You talked about the language, the children agitating against them being taught in a language that was not familiar to them. I'm tempted to ask about now in the Ugandan context, but that is not where we should go. Whether we are actually learning, I think there's even a policy about that where the Ugandan children are supposed to learn in their mother tongue, but that will be a conversation for another day. I would like to ask the captain herself, why is Salvation Army, why do they look at this day, why is it significant to the Salvation Army? Because as far as I know, the Salvation Army also has schools. It runs schools. Why is it important to the Salvation Army?
Okay. Thank you very much, Julian, and thank you, Mr. Apoli, for that introduction. This day is very significant in the Salvation Army because it has, first of all, it has its historical background, as we have heard from Mr. Apoli. In Salvation Army, we take this as a learning platform where we understand that these children took to the streets because they had a need and they felt that they needed to express their need. It reminds us that every child needs a platform where they can be listened to, where their voices can be heard. And from the experience of Soweto, we get to learn that if they are not given that platform, then they may do it, they may express themselves in a way that may not be so good. For instance, in a day-to-day life, you've seen children who are not able to express themselves to parents, they end up abusing drugs because they feel we abuse substance. That is where we can find solace. That's where we can feel comforted. Some feel like if I'm not listened at home, if I'm not listened at school, then I might opt out to an early marriage because I feel that would be a solution to my problems. So this day comes with a lot of weight to us as Salvation Army Church to understand that because we have children under our care, it's good for us to give them platforms where they can always talk, they can always feel loved, they can always feel that their rights are being exercised, and they can always feel that they are accepted in the society and in the communities.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I think I'm yet to come back to you in regard to early childhood development program. Yes, in regards to that. But before I go there, I think this day helps us to, first of all, commemorate, but also celebrate. We celebrate their resilience. We celebrate their boldness. They came out. I want to imagine, can a Ugandan child come out on the streets and, you know, but anyway, I would like to, is there a way we the concerns, Apoli, this is to you. What concerns are those that that South African child went to the street for that we can relate to the Ugandan context? Are they similar or they are different?
I like how you put it, and I'm going to use, answering your question, I'm also going to use some of the things that the captain has said. And let me start at the point where she said that if we do not educate the child in the right way, if we do not listen to the child, they opt for other means on how to be heard. They opt for other means of expressing themselves. And she talked about how some might end up in drugs. But you see, Uganda has a very high crime rate. That is a voice. That's communication. The message is that people do not have jobs, do not qualify to be listened to, and so they decide to do whatever they can do to survive. In Uganda, specifically in Uganda, you cannot move with your phone while on the road. Actually, your friend will tell you, I think you're tired of your phone. Yes, you're holding your phone.
Yeah, true.
In Uganda, even when you're in a residential area, you cannot move out of your house to go to a shop to buy something without locking. Right?
Yeah.
So now that shows you, I don't think the people we are fearing are the educated ones to snatch our phones. Now, there is a way they are expressing themselves, not by going to Soweto on the streets
of
to march like the people or in the streets of Soweto who are marching to Orlando Stadium.
Yeah.
Those ones are opted for the peaceful,
Yeah.
constructive way.
Yes.
These ones are opting for another way.
Yeah.
But you ask for the similarities. Yes, we are not under apartheid.
Yeah.
But you see, our education system, we are trying to change it, but it's still neo-colonized.
Yeah.
You ask yourself, point number one, how many children deep in my village who grew up in a house speaking Rutoro, when they enter primary school, they've not understood English well, but you're instructing them in English. Because I remember there's a time when I was switching from my village school called St. Ronald's Madu, Goma, and I was going to a more little sensible school in Masaka called Kako SS. And I reached there and the things we were teaching in mathematics, in chemistry, I wasn't understanding. I was like, where are we? When I was in Leonard, I was averagely one of the best. When I came this side, oh no. And even in primary, I remember in primary I was here in Nadia, it's a school, it's also a reasonably, called the Kamuluba Primary School. I was not one of the best. When I went to Gomba, in a school called Madurai to Gomba, I was always the second best. That shows you the quality of education the child is getting the other side.
Yeah.
Number two, what are we teaching our children? In some countries, we teach our children, from the very beginning, we teach them what is relevant in our context. Up to now, there are students who are still being taught that there's some white man who came and he discovered Lake Victoria. What? It wasn't there. There were no settlers around Lake Victoria before the white man came. Like, maybe the teaching should change that there's a white man who, the first white man that saw Lake Victoria as a white man, but not discover Lake Victoria.
Yeah.
You realize even Lake Victoria is named Victoria because of the queen of that time. So there, we have to check our syllabus. And I want to quote a gentleman called Carter Woodson. He published a book called The Miseducation of the Negro. Carter Woodson said that if you can determine what a man shall think, you do not have to worry about what he will do. For if you make a man think that he's inferior, you do not have to compel him to accept his inferior status. And if you can make a man think that he's justly an outcast, you do not have to force him to the back door. He will go there himself without being told. And if there's no door, his very nature would demand one. So what I am not saying that the European world did, even up to now, is doing a disservice to us, but I am recognizing the fact that at that time they were very tactical and strategic in controlling our education system, what we shall be educated. Because when you control an education system, then you control how a man thinks. Let me be specific on some of the examples I want to give. Do you realize that up to now, even the educated, in the regions, if you go to northern Uganda, for example, agriculture is dropping because people expect for them to execute agricultural projects, they need aid from international donors who will help them to overcome the effects of the war. Organizations in Africa, some organizations, I'm not saying all, feel like they cannot execute plans for education or plans for interventions without international aid. I told you I worked with the South African community before. One of the reservations I had with the South African community integration process is the fact that it is funded by the Germans, GIZ. So you're integrating and you want to become independent as yourselves, but you're funded by the people you want to be independent from. So why am I saying this? I am now talking to the Salvation Army soldier. That you, as a soldier of the Salvation Army in Africa, what are you doing to help a child, to educate a child? Leave alone the formal education, to educate a child. How are you helping the child that is in need of a book? Let me surprise you as I finish. Do you know that when you go just 30 kilometers away from here, for those people who are listening to me or watching me, just if you're Ugandan, just move 30 kilometers out of Kampala. In the morning between 7:30, actually between 7 to about 8, pay attention to the kids going to school. We still have children who are kilometers from here, where, just in Buyukwe, here where my farm is. There are girls who do not have sanitary pads, 30 kilometers from the capital city. How do you expect that child to return in school confidently the next day? When the period came, she stained her dress and she became a laughing stock.
Yeah.
Is she returning to school the next day? No. There's a client I have, and she's a member of a Rotary Club that I'm not going to mention. But she was telling me that they went to visit a school and they found that P3, P4, P5, P6 sits in the same class. So as a Rotary Club, they were attached to build a school.
Yeah.
Please note, that school is within Kampala. Kampala Metropolitan Capital City. So when we are talking about the things that the South Africans children or students we are feeling, they may not, we are in the reality of that right now.
Yeah.
So how do we help? How do we intervene? The last one. We get funds, and then the next day we have ghost teachers. You know, the current expenditure per capita on every child in Uganda is $50.
Yeah.
A year.
1 year.
1 year. One child. A full child. $50. That's less than that's less than 150 for Ugandans in shillings. Yeah. A year. $50. But we are saying that as an average. That means there's a child who is actually receives $5 per year.
Yeah.
So an average of higher and lower, and then we go to $50.
Yeah.
And that is recent in the previous budget of 2023-2024.
Yeah.
So, but even the little funds that we have, it's misused. So the oppressors then could have been the colonizers. The oppressors then might be amongst us. Because in the Salvation Army, there are people who work with the means of education. In the Salvation Army, there are teachers.
Yeah.
But also the teachers who are so underpaid that instead of coming to school early in the morning, they would rather first attend to the gardens. So all those things are affecting the education of the child in Africa. And we still have needs as a child in Africa.
Wow. Yes. Wow. That is quite so elaborate. It gets me to think we have more concerns. Do we have even the other positive side?
Yeah, we do.
Of,
We
of
do
the
have.
story. What is it that government actually? What is that government? What efforts has government put in place to mitigate some of those issues? Maybe you could tell our viewers that in terms of high crime rate, the government has done this in place. In terms of the girl child, government has done ABC. Yes.
If you can allow me, put this in context. One, we have very long strides that we have achieved as Uganda when it comes to development for and let me tell you, I worked with the judiciary. I recently retired not retired, left judiciary. I retired from public service.
Not tired. Yeah.
One of the things, and I'm going to first appreciate my former employer, the judiciary.
Yes.
If you go to courts in all the big towns in Uganda, we now have what we call the child witness protection room. This is where children can witness from, give witness from, without being on a threat that people are seeing. And then they've also created environments where children can play from and feel comfortable when they come. So there are many organizations, including police, that have started doing things that cater for children if they want to come to court or to police, or they, as witnesses, as victims, to feel free to come and defend their rights. So, and I know for sure that with the different UN agencies that are supporting and different development partners, Judiciary has a plan of establishing what we call the SGBV court that is specialized in handling cases. And you realize most of our SGBV cases are for rape of a girl child and so on. But also we've come up with a lot of legal frameworks that have been established to help in providing education. For example, the government of Uganda introduced universal primary education.
Yes.
Kudos.
Yes. Plus secondary education.
Yeah.
The free of charge.
Yes, we have. They are
Better
free.
than nothing,
Free of
yes.
It's
they're
a free of charge.
Yes, it's free of charge.
Yeah. Although it comes with a little bit of costs, but it is free of charge.
A little bit of costs, and other people may have reservations on and questions on how effective it is, but at least it has established that.
Yeah.
And it has put up a lot of, and I just want, if you can allow me, go through a few policy documents that the government has come up with
Now,
over time.
I'm going to education, the Salvation Army, what efforts the Salvation
Every day, children in Africa shine. They dream big, they learn, they play, and they make our world a brighter place. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer, a teacher, a pilot. I want to help everyone. This year's theme is Education for All Children in Africa. Time is now. Reach their full potential. The Salvation Army Uganda Territory Anti-Human Trafficking Project is calling upon us all to prioritize education, which serves as the cornerstone of development and empowerment. It's through education that children gain the knowledge and skill to break the cycle of poverty, to innovate, and to contribute to communities and nations. We can all play a part in creating a brighter future for every child. Visit our social media handles on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X to learn more and get involved. Together, we can make a difference. Happy African Child Day.
Be that change.
Be that change.
Be that change.
Be that change. Be that change. Be that change.
Every day, children in Africa shine. They dream big, they learn, they play, and they make our world a brighter place. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer, a teacher, a pilot. I want to help everyone. This is the Day of the African Child, a day to celebrate the hopes and dreams of every child in Africa.
Yes, welcome back from our commercial break. Once again, this is the talk show on the Day of the African Child, and we are reflecting on the challenges, opportunities, and responsibilities related to the well-being of the African child. And so before we went for the commercial break, Apuli was still explaining on the policies that are in favor of the Ugandan child, right? Yes, you can highlight to us what those policies are, and are they being implemented? It's one thing to have good policies, it's another thing to enforce them, but also implement them. So which policies are those?
As we begin, I want to make this comment that anyone in any country, if you want to benchmark good policies, please come to Uganda. We really have very good policies. And we have about 20 policy and legal framework documents that guide our education framework, that cater for gender balance in education, cater for the special needs people, cater for tertiary education, cater for secondary, cater for girl child. We have all these things, universal education. I don't know whether you need me to read some of them one by one, or yes,
yeah, just mention them.
Now, some of those, for example, we have a National Curriculum Development Center Act. We have a Uganda National Examination Board Act. We have the Government White Paper on Education. We have Universities and Tertiary Institutions Act. We have the National Physical Education and Sports Policy. We have a basic education policy for education and disadvantaged children. We are supposed to even take care. We have a policy to guide us on how to help those who are educationally disadvantaged. We have the Uganda Post-Primary Education and Training. We have the Revised Education Sector Strategic Plan. We have the Strategic Plan for Universal Secondary Education. We have the Education Pre-Primary, Primary and Post-Primary Act. We have the Business Technical Vocational Education Training Act. We have the Gender in Education Policy. We have the Education and Sports Sector and HIV Prevention Strategic Plan. We have Special Needs and Inclusive Education Policy. We have the Uganda Students Higher Education Financing Policy. We have the National Integrated Early Childhood Development Policy. We have the Harmonized Guidelines for Accelerated Learning Program, Universal Primary Education Policy, and Education for Healthy Policy. All those policies guide in every question we have in education, in the education sector. Now your question was, are they implemented? My answer would be, one, we still have lack of capacity to implement everything. And that's where I appreciate the development partners that have come on board. But at the same point, that's where I challenge every African who has capacity to ask yourself, what have you done to help in relieving the burden of educating the African child, for example, in Uganda, especially those who can't afford, especially those who are disadvantaged. But also, have you asked for accountability and transparency? And I'm going to give you a few statistics. I would have given a lot, but because of time, let me just give the statistics. Statistics show that when it comes to the rate of children who join primary education, the rate is 93.3%. So 93 of all children who should be in primary school are in school. 93%. That's a good one. That's we even need to keep up and jump high.
Primary, right?
That's primary education. Now the transitional rate of the children who actually cross from primary to secondary is 22%. So for every 100 children, only 22 actually go to secondary. So somehow we lose the 7 to where? And then the rate at which students finish primary 7 and senior 4 is 47.5%. So it means of every 100 children that enters secondary, it's only 47 that actually complete senior 4. Oh, of the other 93 that join primary, it's only 47 of those 100 that actually complete primary. And even when they complete, only 22 join secondary. So now that means there's a gap somewhere that needs to be filled to make sure that the dropout is low, the transition rate is high, the completing ratio, completion of level ratio is high. So those are the gaps. I think that's where people like Salvation Army, Organization and Salvation Army come in, either to support the government, to support the communities. Otherwise, we still have
a long way indeed. You talked of very many policies. Implementing them is another thing. It brings me to the Salvation Army. Do you have policies, and are you implementing them? And if you are, what efforts are in place to ensure the protection of the children that are under the care of the Salvation Army?
Okay, thank you so much, Julian. Before I answer you on whether we have policies or not, I want to pick up from where Apuli has left. You see, we have all these policies and legal frameworks, but there's still a gap. And you ask yourself, what is not being done? Because if right now you moved in Kampala, like Apuli said earlier, you will see a child walking barefooted at this age and era. You go to the communities, you find a child with tattered uniform at this age and era. You go to a classroom and you find the ratio of a teacher to student. It's not even wanted. It's something to worry about.
Demanding.
So you wonder what is not being done, despite, because policies are there, yes, but there is still this big gap. So I would come in to say, as Salvation Army, we chose to bridge this gap, and we are doing quite a number of things in different communities, in different districts in Uganda. For instance, in Namisindwa district and Ibanda district, we are doing what we call socio-economic programs to empower the parents of children. You know, a child, we can't count a child as just one single entity. A child has attachments. And you cannot just pick a child and say, let me empower this child. You first think of the child and then think, who is this child attached to? So in response to that, as Salvation Army, we have projects like one that we call Comprehensive Response to Vulnerable Children, where we have been able to collect quite a number of caregivers and parents. We bring them together and we are able to talk to them about parental skills. We are able to empower them with financial literacy, where these parents in a week they meet probably twice, and they have something on the table where a parent can borrow in some money or do some savings. And at the end of the day, you'll find a family that was not able to cater for the needs of their children. At this moment, they are able to buy food, they're able to by the learning requirements that are needed for these children. And they are also able, because we are talking to them about parental skills, they are able to give their children a platform where they can air their grievances, because we wouldn't want a repeat of what happened in Soweto. Again, also we are doing, because if we talk of the needs of children, there are so many. It's not only education. It's only that this year we are focusing on education. But there are other things that we can talk about. We can talk about health. We can talk about nutrition. Many children are affected because of health issues and also malnutrition, that they are not able to go to school because of these things that are affecting them. So as Salvation Army, we have chosen to come in by taking down to the communities programs that handle that. We have food and nutrition programs where we sensitize the parents of these children on how they can plant, harvest food, and even store the food. And that will come and cater the needs of these kids when it comes to food, clothing, and shelter. We are also able to bring these parents together and ask them, what could be the need of your various communities? There are communities where you find that water is a problem. And children will be woken up very early and told, first before you go to school, go and fetch water. And it could be so many kilometers. By the time that child goes to fetch water and come back, by the time he or she enters the classroom, she's already exhausted. He is already exhausted. So as a church, we've been able to do water and sanitation projects in the communities, and it has really propelled a smooth, it has created a smooth learning environment to majority of those children who are in the communities where Salvation has put in a hand. We are doing a lot. We are also having schools where we use those schools to create awareness, because our schools are not just for Salvation Army going children, it is schools for the community. So we have chaplains who are attached in these schools, and they are meant to be spiritual figures of these children. So these chaplains will always create awareness to these children and to these parents that this is the right thing that you're supposed to do at this age and era to avoid this child not to succeed or to attain the dreams that they are having. We are also doing things to do with advocacy on the rights of children, because in most of those schools and most of those communities, we have opened up child protection committees. And these child protection committees, they involve our very own Salvation Army members. It has the CDOs, it has community-based facilitators, it has anybody who would wish to be incorporated. We've put these people there, and they meet regularly, and they are able to look into the needs that are affecting children in various communities where we are running this program. Another thing that we are doing is the socio-economic programs that are running in different parts of Uganda where Salvation Army impact is felt. We have what we call the VSLAs, Village Savings and Loans Association, and in every VSLA group, you find that we have put up an OVC kitty where the community members who meet in that group, they are able to look into the needs of each family. And if there is a child in that community who is lacking books, lacking uniform, lacking school fees, or lacking anything that would make that child be comfortable while in school, we have that kitty, and the community sits together and says, let us take this cash to help the need of that child. And it has really helped, because out of that we've seen in many communities we are not leaving children behind. It's like the communities have strengthened forces to say we are all in it together, we are rising together, we are ensuring that our kids are succeeding together as a community, not just an individual where you say this family is well up, this family is not well up. Through the VSLAs that are being done by the Salvation Army Church, we've seen communities coming together and ensuring that these kids are well catered for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. That's quite detailed enough. Just to bring you to perspective, the Salvation Army it preaches the gospel, it saves souls, then it serves communities. So it is not just enough to preach to you and you accept Christ, but we are also saying, when I was hungry, you fed me. We want it to be come that day that when God says, did you feed me? We say, yes. Salvation Army, we did. So that is what exactly she was trying to explain. But you talked of VSLAs, and the VSLAs that we have been able to visit, I have seen more women involved in those VSLAs. It brings me to the other question, where are the men? Why am I asking that? When you go to schools and, for example, they invite parents to go for PTA meetings, it is the mothers. When you talked of HIV, when they say, let's go and test, the man will say, you go, well, if you're negative, I'm negative. Where are the fathers, especially when it comes to bringing up the girl child? I'm not trying to victimize you. We are going to we are going to celebrate your day come 20th, right?
20th, yes.
Or is it today?
Today, 20th.
Yes, it is the fathers who ask for dowry. When as in this, we are having issues of early child marriages, and the whole thing cascades back to the father. Where are the fathers, especially when it comes to quality education?
Is that a question to me?
To you, because
No.
you're the man.
Father in
Yeah.
the house.
I want to take note that when Captain was talking, she brought in the fact that when you're looking at education, you can't look at it, education of a child, you can't look at it without actually considering the socio-economic factors.
Sure.
Now, if I'm to answer your question, to start with, there are really wonderful fathers who are doing a good job to educate a child.
Yes.
And I am one of those who are striving to become one day that my child will graduate and say, if it wasn't of my father, I don't think I would be here. And I'm sure the people who are listening here are also some parents or some men that are involved in the lives of their children, daughters or sons. Having said that, I want also to recognize the fact that there, as an African society and community, there are social factors, especially culture and traditions, that have defined what a man is and what a man should not be. That as you do, for example, awareness on educating a girl child, educating a child, you also have to do awareness activities on rising or transforming who a man is in the African society. In the African society, a man does not get involved in what they perceive as cheap popularity or cheap things, these cheap affairs of war. So in the African society, a man does not have to talk, they have to act.
I see.
So when you tell me to go to PTA, you're sending me to go and talk. You go, whatever you discuss, I'll pay tuition. But also, the African society has marginalized the girl child. And I want to use a story, if you allow me, if you permit me. I tell a lot of stories of my clients, because when I'm teaching my clients in aspects of communication and public speaking, one of the things I force them to do, or cannot force them to do, challenge them to do, is to tell their stories. So I teach them how to tell their stories. So one client told a story. She's born, and I'm sorry I've not asked for permission if you, my friend, you watch this. She was born of a father who had 4 wives in one house. In that house, in their community, a girl is expected to do everything for a man, including building a house, including fetching something to eat.
Must be Karamojong, right?
No. Now, one of the things that they believed in their community is a child does not have to go to school, a girl child. So if anyone is supposed to be educated, was to be her son. So she has a very beautiful story. She's now actually a professor and she has a PhD. But if she tells you the story she went through to make sure she's educated, she literally educated herself. And at a certain point, she was actually homeless as she was educating herself. Because somehow the community and the family rejected her because she insisted she has to have an education. There's even a school that fired her because she was so pro-girl child. In a community, a school that is supposed to teach her that you're the girl, you are a woman, you can do it, you're the future of tomorrow. In Uganda, we say the girl is the nation. I've forgotten how it's phrased. But the community has taught the man, the mother and the co-wives of the mother believed like the husband that educating the girl is waste of money, including her mother, birth mother. So sometimes we might say, where is the father? But also, where is the mother? Because we tend to influence how the mother thinks. The father tends to influence how the daughter thinks. The brother tends to influence how the sister thinks and perceives the world. So yes, the father is there, but he has also been influenced by societal rules. So unless we have a transformational strategy that yes, strategic army is helping us on the viable, tactical, tangible things of educating a child, how are you creating awareness to a boy? Because it might be too late to change Emmanuel's perception of what society is. Emmanuel is 30 and above or 40. Whatever he perceived as what is. You can only do damage control. But what are you doing for Emmanuel's son, who is going to become the husband in the future? So I think one of the problems we have in Africa and in Uganda, we tend to deal with the aftermath. We tend to do firefighting. We don't look long term. So if we carry out sensitization activities, we are going to pay attention to the man who is already, in the Baganda say, akacha mamamera. Yes, akacha mamamera, mukagorola kamenyeka umenyes. Whatever is molded, if you try to put it right, it will break. So some men are already looking for the father of tomorrow. We start working on this father now. And how do we teach the boy child that even your sister needs to go to have an education? So the father is there, but some fathers are already molded. We can only do firefighting and do the best. We can regulate, and you see, this is how we lie to ourselves. We lie to ourselves that we are creating policies to regulate how men should act, and we forget that the men that the people we expect to enforce the regulations and the policies are the people we want to enforce the laws or policies against. So they are the ones to implement them, but they perceive others. I am not going to quote anyone. So do you expect them to be implemented?
No way.
Wonderful.
And that, Julian, now brings us to the point that there is need for a change. And the change has to start now. The time is now, like it is with the theme of the year. The time is now, and according to this conversation, I'm just feeling my mind getting thrilled to know we've done much, but still there is much to be done.
Let me add that. The time is now,
and
the person is you.
Exactly.
Salvation Army is not a building. Salvation Army or any other person, or when we say Uganda, when we say the government, especially in a democratic country like ours, we say it is the government by the people, for the people, with the people. So when we are talking about Uganda or Salvation Army, we are talking about you. When we are, you know, Julian said, Salvation Army is saying it preaches to you, it saves you, it serves you. No, we want to change it. That as Salvation Army, we preach, we save souls, and we what? Serve the community.
But the change begins with
you. Let me tell you, there's an example you gave. That when you move around the streets, you can see children who are this and that. Let me also tell you, when you go to the homes of the Salvation Army members, the ones who are watching me now, they have a girl who is a maid and is 12 years, is 16, is 15. And they are going to come here and comment and tell us, education for a girl child, what is that maid doing in your home? And I'm not saying, let me finish. I'm not saying that take them back to school, but there's education, you can empower them with another education while they're still even working for you. Because I appreciate you're helping them, you're bringing them from the village where they are nevertheless not even getting an education, but here they can earn. But how have you helped them? Because even around here, the communities, there are institutions and there are governmental projects that are helping, giving free vocational courses. Have you inspired the girl who's working in your house?
In our anti-human trafficking project, we have the slogan, human trafficking starts and ends with you. So in other words, you can be a potential trafficker, or you are a potential victim. So thank you very much for all those deliberations. In the interest of time, I'm going to start with the captain herself. What do you think the viewers can take home with them in relation to this theme?
Before I get to you, I skipped a question whether we have policies.
Yes.
Yes, as Salvation Army we have policies. We have child protection and safeguarding policies, and we are trying to stick by them. Back to your question, what I would wish the viewers to take home is that change begins with you, change begins with me. We have policies, we have strategies, we have a lot of plans in place, but not unless you and me, we are willing to embrace the change that we are out here advocating for, we will always be rotating in Mount Horeb. You remember how the Israelites were able to rotate in Mount Horeb for 40 years until when they called upon God and God had to show direction. We might rotate on the mountain for long, but if we choose to say the change begins with me, then we shall see the light and we shall move on quite very well.
Yes. Yes, like the pastor she had to end it with the scripture. Yes, Apuli, what are your last words to the viewers?
I want to look at the viewer as a member of government, as a member of the community, and as an individual. But at the same time, I want to borrow a leaf from the pastor. And I want to start on a point that is controversial always. And people always don't want me to talk about it. When you read in Daniel chapter 1 and chapter 2, when Nebuchadnezzar took the four young men, Daniel and his three friends, the ones that were called Abednego, Shadrach, and Meshach. We are told when he picked people from Judah, he picked the wise ones, the good ones, to the education of the Babylonians. We actually call, the Bible calls them the Chaldeans.
Chaldeans, yes.
Now, which means the education shapes what a person becomes and shapes what a nation becomes.
Exactly.
So if we do not pay attention to our education system, which does not start from school, which starts from home, then we are losing an Africa and the Uganda we want to build. So after saying that, I want to appeal to the person listening to me as a member of the government or as a person who votes someone who makes up the government. That one, the United Nations expects us to contribute at least 20% of our national budget to education. Uganda in 2017, we are contributing about 9.9%. A few years later, we dropped to 70%. So can we advocate, can you join the people who are advocating that we raise the bar again and we go back to 20% to achieve the SDG of quality education according to the United Nations, which we subscribe to? Number two, you listening to me or following us as a member of the community, can you question loyalty to your beliefs which are created by your society and cultures? I always tell people that loyalty, you cannot be loyal and not disloyal. You cannot be loyal to God if you're not disloyal to Satan. So disloyalty is not actually a problem. Disloyalty is not a character flaw. Disloyalty is a character trait. Because you can't be loyal. So, but you have to ask yourself, the person, the system, the beliefs you're loyal to, are they working for you? Do they deserve your loyalty? Because loyalty is not given, loyalty is earned. Some of us are still loyal to systems that do not deserve our loyalty. So as a community, can you ask yourself, these things I believe in, that a girl child doesn't do this, or a child, after all, they have to take over their father's business of fishing, so you don't have to go to school, go and fish. Then lastly, you as a member, as an individual, the people around you, the maids, the neighbors, what are you helping them? How are you helping them to achieve an education? But when Salvation Army invites, or other organizations invites to join the army and fight lack of education, what is your contribution?
Wow, thank you very much. I want to thank my guests for their thought-provoking conversations. They have provoked us to reflect, first of all, on our individual lives. We could be talking, but when we are housing children, below, you know, and we are using them in child labor and all those things. And it's also, of course, a challenge to all of us as key players, especially when it comes to taking care of children. Someone said that once a child comes out of the mother's womb, their life is like a plain piece of paper. So whoever, as they grow, that piece of paper is being scribbled on by the parent, by the school, by the child, and all those thoughts or scribbles on that piece of paper are what make up that child. So it's also, of course, a challenge to all of us as caretakers of these children to be mindful of their future, because you mentioned something that to educate, let me put it, to educate a child, you have educated a community or a village. Right. Yes, so it's upon all of us to take up our positions and ensure quality education, be it government, be it the church, be it the school, the teachers, the parents. It starts from the parents, right? Yes, thank you so much for joining us, for having joined us. We are thankful. Please subscribe. I believe you have commented. If there are any questions, we are going to respond to them.